Hello and welcome back to What's New in AWS with Enterprise Support. I'm Simon. We've got some new faces here this week. We've got Panish, we've got Jeremy, and we've got Andrew. And this is a little different from the other ones that we do. We are going really deep on resilience this week. So yeah, how are you guys doing? Panish, you doing all right?
Doing good, mate. How are you?
Very well. Andrew, Jeremy, all good?
Yeah. Hey,
Hey,
folks.
yeah, it's great to be here, and I actually thought we'd talk about trusted advisors now, just to make some stuff up about resilience. Totally joking, totally joking. We're all resilience experts on the call.
I mean, if you want to talk about trusted advisor, I'll be happy to see what you can come up with. So we're all technical account managers here at AWS. Andrew, Jeremy, I know you guys are going to be on stage at the summit next month in Sydney. So next month, 5 weeks, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, 10th of April.
So
10th of April.
10th of April. All right. So how about you guys start us off? What do you have for us today?
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, it's awesome to be here, as I said. As Simon alluded to, we're senior technical account managers, so we work at AWS in our enterprise support organization. As you have been introduced to Andrew, he's also a senior TAM. What we're going to talk about is resilience on AWS today. And I think the key thing here is that TAMs work proactively as well as reactively with AWS customers. And they do this so that you can obtain the most business value from your use of AWS. This often means that we're focusing on operational excellence. So that kind of run state. So you've architected your system, you've designed it, you spend a bunch of time building it, and now you've put it into operations. And so that's where we kind of focus. One of the things that we focus there is tough situations when things don't go according to plan, right? You know, you spend all that time, came up with a great architecture, you got the detailed design validated, you built it, and then whoops, oh, something unexpected happened in production. So imagine a high pressure situation. There's lots of folks, both business and technical, on an incident call, and there's a lot of pressure to quickly recover operations. So talking about this, Andrew, speaking about things that don't go to plan, what are you going to show our Twitch audience today, and specifically what will they learn?
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. Hello, folks. So today I've prepared a bit of a demo, and even inside the demo, things didn't go to plan as I thought about it. So what I'm going to do today is demonstrate a tool that we have. It's called Fault Injection Service, which really helps customers shift their resilience testing into and be prepared in that mental model of what happens during these scenarios. So let's get started.
Whoa, hang on, Andrew.
All right.
Before the demo, I've got a question here. Why doesn't AWS handle this, man?
Yeah,
I thought the
go
whole
ahead.
point was the cloud was fake. This will go away, right? What's the dig?
Yeah. All right. You got me. Good question. So I think what's really important is like this question is actually quite common, right? The thing to keep in mind is we've got our shared responsibility model, and it applies to resilience as well, right? So in the case of resilience, AWS takes care of the cloud. Think about services, availability zones, regions. Think about things like IDS, S3. And customers, they need to take care of their specific workload, right? It's all very well and good to launch things on cloud, but like we've got constructs that make it the customers have choices over, right? So multi-AZ is one simple example. And Jeremy, like to answer back on your question, we could have a perfectly healthy system, right? An RDS instance from AWS perspective, it's completely perfect. But a runaway query, a database that's underperforming because of, either overutilization or under provisioning or a bad query or bad query plan, and all of a sudden you have an availability event, right? And so this is really important to a mental model for builders, for professionals, and for executives to understand. It's like just because you launch it on AWS Cloud doesn't mean that it's okay. You need to really pay attention to resilience in your part of the responsibility model. AWS cares a lot about this, and what we're doing is we're delivering the tools that you'll see today. Like one of the tools I'll be demonstrating is Fault Injection Service, And Panish is also going to talk about Resilience Hub. And these are the tools that you can really leverage to improve your resilience, improve the reliability of your workload. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And funnily enough, I literally just had a customer situation like you mentioned with the suboptimal performance, and it was super interesting as we dove deep in with the support there, and Performance Insights really helped on that. Anyway, let's not plug any AWS services here. We're here to talk about resilience. You've totally got me ready to go. Show us what you've got lined up.
Yeah. All right. So for our viewers, to get the maximum out of this session, I prepared a 5-minute demo. Okay. There's a lot of screens that need to change. So I've pre-recorded it. I'll pause in some sections to accentuate the key concepts, and then we can have a lot of questions from the audience. We can zoom backwards, forwards, and I've got some console screens to actually show some of these things live as well. So let's kick it off. So
cool. Hey, Andrew, could you make the screen a little bit bigger?
What you should see on your screen is a little bit of a yeah. I don't know. Haha. Okay.
I think we're.
This is.
Okay.
Yeah, that looks good actually. I can see it.
I don't know. Let me zoom in. I beg your pardon. You can see it better. Is that better for people?
Yeah,
okay, let's try again.
I think it's all right. Yeah.
So what you see here as I press play is a bit of a script. Okay, the script, all it got on a Kubernetes cluster, and it repeats the curl request every second. And when I execute this, I want to point it out that all I'm looking for is a 200 things are working. And so this is going to be the basic building block. This is the actual application that I'm using, right? And what you see is that we're going to kick off an experiment. And I have a hypothesis here, that my hypothesis is if an AZ is impaired, everything will work, right? So I have 2 instances up and running, one in US West 2A, one in 2B, right? I'll zoom in a little bit there. And they're both healthy. Everything's working, right? So as we continue on our dashboard, which is really important, where alarms are coming in, they're also monitoring. I've got anomaly detection. I've got auto-scaling group hosts. I've got an aggregate or a composite alarm, which connects all of the other alarms there, right? And so we're going to kick this off. This is a pre-prepared power interruption. This is what we call an approximation of a power interruption event, right? So if I click into it, you guys will see there are only 2 actions that are pre-configured. This is very, very simple. And the targets for this, and I think this is really, really important, is just 2 resource types, and they have a resource tag right there. Resilience test equals yes, and AZ impairment ICE ASG. So I just want to pause there. One of the things that it's really important about fault injection service and about doing this hypothesis is you're highly targeted. And in terms of my advice for customers who are starting out with this type of resilience testing is obviously do it in your dev environment first as you build a muscle, right? So we're targeting specific resources, right, in this. And as I click Start Experiment, I want to show you that the script is running. I've got 10,000, requests in the loop, right? So we've got, we've done 24 seconds already there. I'm going to click Start Experiment. All right, here we go. And we're going to press Enter. So this doesn't take long to start up. Okay. You're going to see the state is initiating, right? And we're going to look at auto scaling groups in a second, right? But if I scroll down, you'll see that this screen is about to change from pending to running, and you're going to start seeing which targets are actually being selected inside this experiment. You can see the resolution right there. So we've picked it up, right? There's my instance that we're about to terminate. There is the auto scaling group that's about to be impacted. And bang, I got myself an error. So it didn't take long at all. Right? That's right. Yeah. So, so now let's look at a little bit deeper what actually happened, right? This will obviously show up at 500. Okay. So the first thing is that I want, our builders to pick up on this is that I had a hypothesis. I thought everything will work and I'm doing a test. And now I figured out that I've got a weakness in my system, right? Now I did that on my terms, right? I did it in a dev environment, but now I've learned something and I've learned a lot. And let's see what I've learned. And I actually, this specific test didn't go to plan, and I'll show you why. What I expected was an instance was unhealthy, right? One was terminated. And then, this is what I really like. This is what I'm going to kind of pause on. So the auto scaling group, the tech wizardry that just happened under the hood is really impressive. Since reInvent in 2023, Vault Injection Service is now is talking to our APIs under the hood, like AWS auto scaling APIs. And what you could tell is you can say to AWS EC2, hey, don't give me my capacity. I want to know what happens under stress. Don't return to me an instance. I want you to return to me an error. Now this has never been able to be done before by customers. Customers had to create their own NACLs, their own security groups to try and emulate an impairment. This is getting that next level of depth. You're actually telling AWS, hey, I'm about to run an experiment. Don't give me capacity. I want to know what happens to my system. Is it going to be resilient? Is it going to recover? So this is a really powerful toolkit, and this is not something that is available outside of Vault Injection Service. So as I continue on this, right, I'm sure there'll be questions. I'll get to them in a little bit. But as I continue on this, the thing that differentiates a true error to the one that we've injected is there is a focus on injected by AWS FIS. So that's how you know that you've got something there from us. And excuse me. So now comes the part which I didn't expect. See, I expected termination of the instance. I expected the insufficient capacity error. I expected the launch failure. But what happened next was really, really interesting. And this goes back to learning on what happens through experimentation. So as I go back to the screens for auto scaling group, yes, that's still a problem. Yep, it hasn't recovered. We know that. And as I go through to the auto scaling screen, with me in a second, something new happened. Come on. What you're about to see is that a new instance was spun up. Now, I did not expect that. If I click refresh right now, okay, what you will see is that an instance was spun up, even though I told auto scaling group, don't spin it up. But what I failed to recognize is there are multiple AZs in my configuration, lesson number one, right? And then what it did do is that it figured out that I can't go to US West to A, and it spun up another one into B. So all of a sudden, I've learned yet another thing that's happening under the hood that I did not expect. So that's the demo in its entirety, right? I guess we can talk about this if there's any comments, right, from our viewers, and we can dig in further.
Thanks, Andrew. I thought that was really cool, and I loved your call out about not performing it in non-production. Especially if you're super confident it's going to work in production, always a good idea to not test there first. One question I had while you're running through that was, why do we need the Vault Injection Service for this, or FIS? Why can't I just jump into the console and randomly terminate some instances or put some NACLs on my VPCs, as you mentioned, for restricting network traffic?
Yeah, look, absolutely. And customers used to be able to do that, right, as a capability, but it doesn't quite approximate, the ability to do the power impairment experiment, right? So a Vault Injection Service combines multiple sets of experiments. We can pause EBS IO. We can tell auto scaling groups, hey, don't give me capacity, give me an error. You can't do that outside of FIS. FIS is the only vehicle that can help you with that. And what also is important around FIS is the observability, right? So when you're running a chaos experiment like this or a resilience test, you could say, I don't want to keep running this if my metrics are dropping, if my alarms are firing. I know I've learned something. Let's kill the experiment, right? And so all of a sudden, all the automation that happens behind the scenes is now triggered to stop the experiment, to return the system to the state prior, so you can, figure out and learn these net new lessons.
Yeah, that's awesome. That kind of makes sense. And I think probably your demo probably pointed it out when I reflect on it, which is that there's no easy way for a customer to kind of simulate insufficient capacity, right? Or an AZ
right.
power event causing an impairment. It's not like you can ask AWS to turn off an AZ for a couple of minutes just so you can test some stuff.
That's right.
I mean, hey, maybe it's a feature request for folks that want it. I'm not sure we'll go ahead with it. One other thing, in your demo, you showed a sweet CloudWatch dashboard, and you had a couple of things in there that I really wanted to drill in on. One was, it looked like some fancy machine learning to do the analysis of an alarm, and the other one was you talked about aggregate alarms and how we can implement that using CloudWatch Composite alarms. I'd really like to dig in on that a little bit more.
Yeah, okay. So let me just bring that up to the section. I think it was here. Here we go. So the composite alarms are really important. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to pause here. So what you see here is, and this is the start of resilience journeys. I think if I pull back on kind of why we need this is, how do you know something worked, right? How do you know that your system is actually resilient? Well, it goes back to the concept of critical user journeys. It goes back to the concept of, does your system deliver on the promise? Okay. How do you measure that? Well, in this particular demo, what I'm putting in is 4 or 5 metrics. I had a latency alarm. How quickly do I have a response on the website? I had a home page rendering alarm that I was utilizing to say, yes, everything's going on. And it was a canary that that was set up. And then what I did is I combined the aggregate. I created what's called a composite alarm so that I can query just one alarm and make programmatic actions on it. This is really good for fault injection service to do a stop function as an example, right? So, in the context of like resilience testing, chaos engineering, fault injection simulation, the observability is probably the first step that we don't typically talk about, right? And so, whenever I talk to customers, we see, observability is almost kind of like the first gap that we identify. Like, how do you know everything's okay, right? We've got lots of dashboards, but do those dashboards monitor the right thing? And all of a sudden it opens up a very interesting conversation. So in here, I've created a little bit of a how-to, use composite alarms, go and do the dashboards, and that gives you a lot of power when you're doing the actual experiment, because experiment can stop programmatically if an alarm is triggered, and that what we call is a stop condition.
Cool. Yeah, I really think that was good, and I love the call out to observability, especially around reducing your mean time to detect, right? The ability for you to quickly detect that a failure has occurred so you can start recovering. It's awesome. And I like the call out on metrics that make sense to your business. In this case, with a shopping system, having the latency, which is how responsive your site is, and the homepage rendering, is your site up and actually producing content, are key metrics that business would care about. For other organizations, it could be something completely different, right? So that's super
keeping
powerful.
It close to the So the lesson that I've learned is keeping it closer to the user experience, right? Keeping those, whatever you're monitoring, it as long as it's close to the business function, to the critical process, to the user journey, to the users who are actually using the system, then those metrics are extremely meaningful, right? So I know this sounds basic, but it really is somewhere that I see customers needing additional help, is the mental model, right? We all know how to capture, CPU utilization, but what does it actually mean? Is CPU of 80% good or is it bad?
Yeah, I think it's a great topic, Andrew, and that's another thing where, when we construct these dashboards or we talk about like a high severity aggregate alarm, like you were talking about earlier with the composite alarm, the key thing there is these are things that are meaningful that you want to grab an operator's attention to. I mean, there's a whole bunch of metrics that you'll have, and you'll go look at them when there's a problem for troubleshooting. But you don't want those 1,000 metrics on a screen, right? You want the ones that matter to your business. The utilization, it's great for troubleshooting, but it's not a metric that you're capturing and going, this is prime real estate. Prime real estate is my shipping orders, are people engaging with my site, whatever they may be.
Correct.
Cool.
And yeah, look, and observability, I think, is a huge topic. And I wouldn't do it justice by talking just about the 4 alarms that we have here. But the reality is, I want for our audience to know that it is okay to get started with just these 4 simple steps, right? Like, make an assessment of your application, do a test and a hypothesis. Will it work? Create a dashboard, create alarms. Like, these simple steps will actually drive a lot of improvement in your journey for resilience. And resilience is really important, especially for those super important systems where people depend on, financial services. We're talking about safety, all right, anywhere where the cost of downtime is actually more than just impact to our bottom line. It's more like brand damage and things like that. So anyway, I'm on a tangent. I could talk about this for hours. I think there's so many takeaways that I'd love to kind of connect with people on, but Simon, if you don't stop me, I'll keep on rambling.
Yeah, I was going to say, me and Andrew,
I'm enjoying this
show,
right now.
We'll totally take the show.
I'm happy for you to take the show. This is really interesting to me.
One thing I wanted to call out is, if folks aren't aware of it, we've got this great resource, and that's where we take our inspiration from, isn't it, Andrew? Is the Amazon Builders Library. We'll get our chat moderator to stick the link into the Twitch chat for folks. But the really cool thing there is there's some great articles that kind of talk through this conceptually, and they don't really talk about AWS tech. Like they're just generically good things. So one of the things that I want to call out is for people that want to know how to do more of this stuff. Automating safe hands-off deployments is a really good article that talks through instrumenting some of your systems and how to do deployments. And that's probably a good segue to talk about our upcoming AWS Sydney Summit session. Not that this is a plug for it.
Shameless plug.
Totally shameless. Totally shameless. All right, Andrew, do you want to talk through our session?
Yeah. So shameless plug. Jeremy and I are going to be at the Sydney Summit on the 10th of April, Builders Day. We've got a session that we're presenting to builders about minimizing downtime and maximizing reliability, strategies for safe deployments. Part of this demo, what you saw today, is going to be expanded on into safe deployments, pipeline injecting friction. We will be talking more about this particular demo. So I think, the call out from me is, if you want to talk to us, if you want to reach out to us, come and visit us, ask us questions. Personally for me, resilience is a project of passion for me and an area that I dive into. I want to talk to customers. I want to help them. Jeremy and I are always talking about this. So reach out to us on social media. There is our LinkedIn there. There's Jeremy's, there's mine. I've been lucky enough to get the resilience guy as a trial. I don't know.
I just realized that.
Yeah,
pretty sweet, right? I can't believe no one has thought of that before. And he really is a resilience guy, right? Like Andrew knows a lot about resilience, folks. So take advantage. You've got his LinkedIn and his email there, and we're happy to chat either at our session at Sydney Summit or afterwards. You'll find us at some of the booths where we'll be chatting about all things AWS.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, team.
Yeah, it's been great.
Wait, Andrew, before you go, you talk a little bit about observability. So we've got a comment in the chat by the Sadies_ya. I think that's how you pronounce it. So would you talk a little bit more about CloudWatch Synthetics? I know this probably on this stream you wouldn't be able to because we don't have the time, but at the summit or other events, we'll be talking about that. I think that'll be pretty useful for observability as well.
Yeah, 100%. So look, it's a really good topic. I've set it up, right? But there's other areas around it. There's real user monitoring. There's synthetics. There's emulating behavior. There's a bunch of Lambda code that CloudWatch allows you to execute, right? So the depth of how far we can go with this is amazing, right? For people who explore on CloudWatch, go to synthetics and create go through the wizard of going under the hood. There's libraries like Selenium there, and so you can really go deep in that topic. How deep you want to go, it's really, I wouldn't be doing it justice because I'm not even a synthetics specialist or a CloudWatch specialist. All I care about is that the right question is asked by the customer, because within 10 minutes of kind of searching and looking at instructions, you'll figure it out. But the mental model of making sure that you're monitoring that user journey, it's where the gold is, right? Because 90% of that is just making sure that you know what to monitor. I didn't answer the question. Sorry.
I was going to say, Andrew, what I've asked for is I've got one of our chat moderators to put some useful links. So I think we've got some from the Builders Library, there's some blog posts, and also our resilience prescriptive guidance on observability. So it'll just give you a shopping list of things to look at, and from there you'll find other links. But there's a big topic, search on the AWS blog, but that'll kind of get you started.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions from our viewers? This is solid.
Yeah, I love it.
All right. While we're waiting for the questions, let's go to Panish. I know. So we've actually seen Resilience Hub in Andrew's demo, but we've kind of never talked about it. Not on this forum. And I know there's been quite a bit of changes to Resilience Hub recently. So I thought maybe let's do a refresher. So Panish, what are you going to talk to us today?
Thanks, Simon. Yep, I think the chat, what just Andrew had, provides a good segue into what Resilience Hub offers as a whole as a product, because fault injection service is one of the key components that is a part of the Resilience Hub. Just a bit of my background. I've been into AWS for 1.5 years and based out of Melbourne. I come from a DevOps background, and I'm specifically telling you about DevOps because the kind of stuff that we are going to dive deep into today, it tees back into my area of interest. So before further ado, foreshadowing, yes. Before further ado, I'll quickly share my screen. Let me know if you can see it.
All good.
Coming up. Yep. All right. So just a bit of a background about Resilience Hub. So this is an application focused service. This provides a hub or a central place for you to define, validate, and track the resilience of AWS applications, so you can avoid downtime caused by software or an infrastructure disruption. Now it integrates all the components of resilience in one hub. So let me give you an example. So it can recommend you to reconfigure RDS to use multi-AZ feature for database availability improvements. Secondly, it offers application owners and developers a way to validate the resilience of their applications via testing and fault injections, which Andrew just showcased. Thirdly, it protects the application by tracking any changes in its resilience posture. Now you can track it by integrating that with the code pipeline or the deployment pipeline that you have. That's where the DevOps piece come into picture. And then it can provide alerts if there are any deltas or any drifts. And finally, if any outage occurs, it will help you identify the root cause and suggest to launch any associated statement of standard operating procedures and help you recover the application as well. Now I know I've talked about a bit, so let's quickly dive into how it works.
Before you start, one question: what would it cost our customers?
What would it cost our customers? So this is dependent on the application that you are. So number of applications that you have within the Resilience Hub. That's how it is costed. If you want to try it out, the first 6 months it's free. And for the first 3 applications that you include in Resilience Hub, you can try it out using that. But then after that, it will cost you $15 per month for an application to run those resilience tests. All right. Now, how do we define and how do we work on Resilience Hub, right? Let's quickly start with the first component, and that is policies. The first thing that we do in Resilience Hub is to create a resiliency policy. Now, these resiliency policies, it depends on how critical your application is. You can have an application that is mission critical, that you cannot have a downtime for more than 5 minutes. or you can have an application that you can still manage certain downtime, maybe an hour, or maybe, I don't know, maybe a day. So you can create your own policy, you can create your own RTOs and RPOs within the application, or you can select policies that are pre-populated by us. And you can see the number of RTOs and RPOs within that. So in this particular example, in this particular demo, I've already created a policy, which is called ARH Lab. And this is a mission critical policy with an RTO and RPO of 5 minutes. So that's how.
Just quick question for you, mate. We're all super great resiliency people here, but do you want to explain RPO and RTO to our audience, just in case they're not across those concepts?
100%. So RTO is recovery time objective. That means that how much downtime your application can bear, how much downtime you can bear for an application to be down at that stage. And RPO is recovery point objective, which means till what point back you can have that recovery done for an application. Say, for example, your application, you can have that recovery pointed back to, say, 5 minutes, or 12 hours. When was the last backup done for your database? So RTO is a time construct where how much time your downtime your application can expect, and RPO is where the last point where you can pick up your application from.
Thanks. That makes a lot of sense.
I'm going to jump in there.
All right, you go, Andrew.
No. All right, so
you go, Matt. You go.
Yep.
So Panish, I think what I wanted to say was, in the last probably 3 to 4 years, I've been speaking about this topic and with customers, and it's amazing that this specific policy, like that first user journey, it's a forcing function for customers. Like, forget the technicalities here, right? Like, when we ask what's your RPO and RTO, the truth is that, of my experience, is customers go, I don't know.
Yep. I faced that as well. Right. Yes, you're right.
Right. So like, if when customers think about resilience, like, this is probably a really good business conversation. Like, forget the technology side of it too, right? Like, you can't assess it until you trial it. And what's cool, like, what's really interesting about this, and I think that's a takeaway for customers, is just by doing this specific policy introduction, right, and thinking about it that way, even if you pick a number in the air, like I'm okay with 1 day, right, it's still insightful. It's still a great starting point, and it's easy for customers to get started, right? You can move this policy down to mission critical. You can move it to sorry, I'll be taking for ages, but I thought it's really important that our technologists who are dealing with these problems with the business always, like, you could rely on this and go, I'm just going to start with 1 day as a guess, right? So anyway, I'll shut up.
No, I think you touched base on a very critical point here. This is as important as a business conversation as a tech conversation here. Because understanding the application's RTO, RPO, its resiliency posture, you need to understand how critical that application is, which sometimes in the customer's landscape, it's our chance as well to educate. So we work with the customers, we work with the business owners, we work with the product owners to understand what's there, and then we define. And sometimes tools like Resilience Hub do help. It starts that thought process in that journey. So yeah, thanks for calling that out. In this particular case, I have created a resilience policy. And apologies, viewers, if I'm looking at the other screen, because I'm showcasing a demo on my second screen. The second step is to import an application. Now, there are multiple ways you can import an application into Resilience Hub. Just an example, if you want to put an application, you can import it using the CloudFormation stack that you have defined for your application. You can have a resource group. You can have an app registry application that's there. You can import through that. And you can also, as a new feature in Resilience Hub, you can also use the Terraform state files to import the application within Resilience Hub. There are other ways to import, which is you can use EKS only to import your EKS clusters, and also resource collections on EKS to import. In this particular example, what I've done is I have created a CloudFormation stack, and I have imported that application inside the Resilience Hub. I'm just showcasing it to you here right now. However, I have already done that as part of my application import. The other thing that's critical here is to set up resiliency drift detection. Now, what that means is it will schedule automatic assessment of your application, which is highly recommended because it will do it in a scheduled way. However, for our experiments and for our POC or the showcase, I have not enabled that because I want to run it on my manual trigger. So let's go back. Now, this particular application that I first imported, this application had, it's a stock standard application with two availability zones. There are two EC2 instances in the availability zones with an application load balancer. There is a primary and a secondary database, and there is one NAT gateway in the availability zone A. There are S3 buckets that is along with the application, but there is no versioning enabled. So although this kind of function will work for an application, however, this won't suffice for a mission critical stage where it does not have RDS backups, it does not have versioning enabled, you don't have redundancy in NAT gateways. And let's see if Resilience Hub picks that up. Before we begin, as you import the application, you can see all the application components that are a part of the application. You can see them listed here. It automatically lists all the application components that are there. You have the ability to even select or not select the application components resilience that you want to test it out or not. So we go into the assessment tab, and this is the first assessment report that I ran on the application. It automatically says that the policy is breached. So it says that, although your application does not suffice your mission critical policy standards, and it gives you resiliency recommendations. Like in this case, it is saying that for a networking component, it says that there is deployed to only you can deploy a NAT gateway onto several availability zones. It says that you can modify NAT gateway configuration by deploying it to an additional availability zone for redundancy. For database component, it has given you several recommendations, which includes RDS automated backups. The good thing about Resiliency Hub is that it gives you the base cost associated with it as well. So say, for example, if it recommends any changes, it will give you the base cost that is associated with that, which helps the customers to understand, if I make those changes, what are the cost components associated and what would be the extra cost that we can bear. Considering all these resiliency recommendation, I ran another report. I made those changes on the application. I deployed according to the recommendations that were made. So certain changes that I did was I included RDS automated backups. I put the EC2 instances in an auto-scaling group. I enabled the S3 versioning, which is critical to improve the resiliency posture. And then I ran the assessment report again, which you can see here that it's success and the policy is met. All the recommendations that were there, they're all green now. So it gives you an idea of how the changes that we are making and how you can improve the resiliency posture. And then by implementing those changes, it will immediately show you as a next assessment that you have implemented that, then now the application meets that particular policy. Now moving on to the next feature.
You've talked about policies and whether your particular application would breach that policy, and then the recommendations as well. Now, if you move that policy to something that's a bit more stringent, right? Something that's maybe more critical, would the recommendation change as well?
The recommendations will change. So the recommendations is based on the policy that we are assigned to it. Currently, like in this particular example, the policy that I've assigned to this particular workload is a mission critical, where we cannot have an RTO and RPO for more than 5 minutes. Now, if we change the policy to say, like I showed you initially, there are some non-critical applications where your RTO and RPO can have a bit more relaxed time frame and recovery point, then these recommendations will change as well according to make sure that the policy and the application is compatible.
Yep. Gotcha.
Now,
thank you.
one thing that Resilience Hub also provides is it takes you away from the traditional disaster recovery testing. Now you don't have to wait for say a 6 months or a 12 months time where you run your disaster recovery, check the application resilience. What happens here is you can run the resilience report every time you make any changes in the deployment on the application, every time you deploy. How it works is, and it makes sense, because sometimes what happens is we make some changes in the application, we might drift away from what resilience we want to achieve, any changes that we do. So it will continuously monitor, and that's where the DevOps piece come into picture, where it integrates with the application code pipeline. So something that I want to show here.
Yep. But before you continue, there's a question in the chat. So what does Resilience Hub considered an application? I know we've kind of touched on that before.
Yeah.
Can we go a little deep on that? Like, how do we define an application for Resilience Hub?
So application are the set of resources that are defined, and that can be based on a CloudFormation template. It can be based on a Terraform state file or resource tags. It can be an EKS cluster, EKS import that they can do, but you're considering the application as a set of resources coming from these origins.
And so if you can define them via resource tags, that's basically, something that, it doesn't have to be deployed within a single CloudFormation or Terraform. You can basically just specify it as a single application, right? So different resources, you can just kind of group them into a single application.
Yeah, so maybe I can jump in there. So
yep.
The quickest way, right, is if you don't have CloudFormation templates, if you don't have any of that automation, you set up a resource group. Now, resource group is just a way for you to group your resources based on a specific tag. So let's say you've got your NAT gateways, your EC2, your S3 buckets, and you've got a tag on it, application ID equals my application. You create that as a resource group, and then you scan that in the application in Resilience Hub, right? So it kind of propagates down via the tag, and it's really, really easy, which means that you don't have to think about, I must have a template or I must have a CloudFormation side of things, right? You could, for customers who have, let's say, enterprise apps or things that they had to deploy in a very specific way, or legacy code, which requires them to be a lot more manual, they could still utilize the concept of resource groups to combine it, right? Connect all the pieces together via that tag, look at it as a resource group, and then scan it in Resilience Hub, right? And that construct works really, really well. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for jumping in there. Yeah, so I hope that answers the question, Sam.
Yeah, I think we did. Thank you. Sorry for interrupting. Please continue.
Not a problem. So we'll move into the pipeline piece of it and how we integrate Resilience Hub in the application deployment pipeline. So this is the pipeline that I'm using to deploy the application. One thing that I want to show here is deliberately I introduced another S3 bucket into the application which did not have versioning enabled. Now, if you go into the pipeline, it deployed, and at the resiliency check level, it failed. And we can show that here in the assessments that there is a code pipeline assessment that occurred, and it failed here. It says that the policy is breached. And the breach policy says that, it suggests that you need to enable the versioning on the S3 bucket. So that's...
Hey, Panish, I'm gonna chime in there, right? Mm-hmm. What's interesting is if you go back to your code pipeline, right? What you just demonstrated, you've got resilience checked right at the end, right?
Yep.
So what customers can do is move that up the stack.
Yep.
Right now, I've got my source check-in, right? I'm going to go to my resilience check, and unless it passes, I won't deploy. And so all of a sudden, just by doing this resilience check, you're actually improving the reliability of your system, right? Like this is really, really powerful construct. It's really simple, right? But it's beautiful. Like it's just, push it up, and you've got yourself protective friction, and I think that's, I think about injecting friction. There's not really a lot of friction here. Like the resilience scanning is super quick, right? Like we scan the metadata on the resources in like seconds.
No, this is a plug for our session at Summit, by the way. I'm just like, not plugging it.
Yeah, sorry.
I mean, Andrew, you're making a great point. But also having the resilience check at the end is really good to say, after I've done my deployment, have I affected the running production? So I'd actually have two. I'd have one to go, are you doing any config before that could impact? And then afterwards, let's prove that we haven't. Sorry, back to you, Padish.
And thanks, Andrew, for chiming in. That was just the next thing that I was about to say.
Oh, damn it, I'm sorry.
Not a problem.
I haven't heard you deliver this.
You beat me to it. But anyway, so exactly my point. So Jeremy, what I wanted to highlight here is that, how we always talk about the shift left approach in the security space of the pipeline. We can do that approach for resiliency as well. This kind of a construct can really work in your lower environments where you have deployed on your dev and test, and you've done the deployment, you check the resiliency, and then you can make the changes. But say, for example, if you want to deploy in higher environments, a UAT and a production, you can move this step in the DevOps pipeline prior to deployment, like what Andrew suggested, and you can get the best of both worlds. And it totally depends on the requirement of the application owner and the criticality of the application. But this resiliency check step can be moved up and down in your deployment pipeline on however you want to shift left there. Yep.
I just wanted to call out another thing, right, Pranesh?
Sure thing.
So Resilience Hub has a multi-account structure capability as well, right? So I don't know if you're going to talk in depth about this, but I really want to call out, like, if you do have, let's say, your development environments that are constantly being scanned, right? Or UAT, but not production, right? If you're starting on that resiliency journey with cross-account, right, capability, you could aggregate all those fundings into a central location. So all of a sudden, if you're an enterprise that has hundreds of apps, different divisions all around the world, and you want to have a nice little picture of the aggregated governance findings, like how are we doing, what are we doing with our deployments, where is the development of all of our apps coming in, and you can start formulating this up the stack. So if you don't want to inject friction because you want to say, you know what, teams need to do whatever they need to do, I'm just going to add the scans as the scan function to those applications. All of a sudden, the central teams, risk teams will start seeing a new sets of data about how they're doing, how the build phase affects the resiliency posture of all of their apps. So that's like another, if we step away from the construct of, hey, I've got my app, I'm checking it, like the next level of construct is, hey, I've got 1,000 apps. How do I know what's good and what's not? And now you start to manage this at scale, which, we often talk about that, but that's where I'd see a use case, not to inject friction, but do it right at the end, just like you did there, right? For reporting, for governance.
Yeah, thanks for that, Andrew. And it makes a lot of sense if you are talking, which most of the big organizations do. It's not just one app; it's the overall application portfolio that they have, and how to make sure that it gets corrected at the start rather than just going granular, which makes a lot of sense. Just to wrap this up, what I did was I included that change within the pipeline, made a small change with the application, enabled bucket versioning, ran the pipeline again, and there you go. It's all succeeded. So just wanted to highlight here is that with this pipeline integration with the pipeline and all the things said with Andrew, myself, and Jeremy, it's more on the lines of how you get the concept of continuous integration or continuous resilience with the application, rather than waiting for a disaster recovery exercise that you have every 6 months or 12 months. So that's probably one of my favorite feature with Resilience Hub. With that, I'll wrap up my demo and would open the forum for any questions.
Yeah, I think for any TAMs, on the call or off the call, definitely we'll prefer having resiliencies versus DR.
Good point.
Everyone had that experience where in the middle of the night, your phone goes off, you come out, something didn't work, and it's bad for the customers, definitely bad for us, and bad for our significant others as well. So
Mate, you got the point where I was coming from. So
speaking about that, I think we've forgotten one big thing, right? If memory serves me right, today is March 8th. So happy International Women's Day to all the ladies out there, right? Right.
Yeah.
We started this thing only focusing on resilience, but the world outside is celebrating.
Yep.
So all
Good call out. Good call out, Andrew. Yeah.
I almost forgot.
So with that, we'll end it here this week. Thank you very much, folks, for joining us on this, and thank you very much, Panish, Jeremy, and Andrew, for joining me on this. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Bye-bye.
It's great being here. Thanks, folks. Have a good day.
Thank you.